I have a runner show. Angel, could you please give the runner show to this gentleman? Yeah, thank you. Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hello, Fernanda. Thanks for joining us online. Would you mind doing a quick check of your microphone? We can see you on the screen here in the room.
Okay, perfect. Yes. Hi to everyone.
Okay,
Nice to
wonderful.
see you, Fernanda. This is Alice here.
Hi,
Is that
Alice. Nice to
possible
meet
that
you too.
Fernanda can also see what's going on the stage?
That would be
Hi,
amazing.
Kath. Thanks, Fernanda, for your patience.
Don't worry, don't worry.
Hello. No, but we're okay. So Fernanda.
Yes.
So I think I shouldn't use my laptop because that blocks her, right? I'll just leave it here. And I'll keep my notes here.
Hi, Fernanda. We just wanted to let you know that there's still some time before the start at 45 to the hour, so you can take a break, stretch the legs, get some water before, and then once we start, we'll bring you back. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
Hi, hi, Maria, testing mic.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi.
Yes, okay, good. Maria Hafnia, we can see you, we can hear you. Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Marrakech Partnership Transport Action Event. My name is Alice Yu from the COP28 Partnership, and I'll be your host today. Today, we are gathered here to celebrate transport's critical role in enabling prosperity and livelihoods. This is a sector that contributes 6.8 trillion US dollars of the global GDP and employs 193 million of workers around the world. And at the same time, its challenges are equally daunting. Fastest growing source of emissions around the world, It needs to reduce nearly 60% of CO2 emissions by 2050 in order to stay within the 1.5 degrees Celsius pathway. Clean transport solutions will cost an estimated 2.7 trillion US dollars annually between now and 2025, and that's 7 times more than the current transport spending. Today, we want to let you know that despite these challenges, parties and non-party stakeholders are ready to be the solution and not the problem. Looking ahead towards the next round of NDCs, we are now at the window of opportunity to unlock the ambition of transport in a just and equitable 1.5-degree future. Today, we are honored to hear from leaders and change makers who contributed to accelerate this transition. So please welcome our keynote speaker, Her Excellency, Ms. Nagar Apadarel, the UN High-Level Climate Champions, to set the scene. Nagar.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, great honor to be here today with all of you. And I'm really honored to hold this function as UN climate change high-level champion, the role which is focused on the bridging the work of national governments with the frontline work of non-state actors, from CEOs to NGOs, from city mayors to youth to leaders, from indigenous peoples to university academics. Ladies and gentlemen, the challenge before us is clear. In just the last 3 decades, the number of passengers we move has tripled. The goods we transport have grown 4 times. This growth brings prosperity, but also puts our climate goals at risk. But the opportunity is huge. According to this year's emission gap report by UNEP, shifting to public transport and bicycle use in our cities could cut emissions by 1.4 gigatons per year by 2035. That is equal to making 300 million cars off the road in year by 2035. But this shift must be fair, and that brings me to the heart of today's discussion, the people who make our transport system work. Popular transport services run by local entrepreneurs account for 68% of public transport road trips in developing countries. In some African cities, this reaches 100%. These informal workers are both essential to our mobility and vulnerable to climate impacts. The scale is significant. They represent nearly half of the world's transport supply and contribute to the 70% of employment worldwide provided by SMEs. Today, we are launching 3 major initiatives. First, the Maritime Just Transition Plan for Africa, committing to training and upskilling Africa's 78,000 seafarers by 2030 for zero emissions shipping. Second, new NDC enhancement tool, templates for active travel, public transport, rail, and crucially, popular transport. This will help countries include informal transport workers in their climate plans. Third, the avoid and shift breakthroughs, doubling fossil-free transport by 2030. This isn't just about technology, it's about people and livelihoods and communities. But let's be clear, there is no one-size-fits-for-all solution. While our climate goals are global, the pathways to achieving them must be local. We see this in action today, where we will hear from South Africa, where trade unions are leading the way in preparing seafarers for zero-emission shipping. Chile, where Minister Munoz is transforming public transport systems. Here in Azerbaijan, where our railways are modernizing in the middle corridor. Each of these examples show how communities are finding their own path to sustainable transport while creating decent jobs and better services. Each also links to what countries can signal and push through their more ambitious NDCs, supported by the NDC enhancement tool. And as we work to transform land and maritime transport, we must also recognize that sustainable aviation will be crucial for meeting long-term climate goals and will require global agreements and shared solutions across NDC's commitments. A conversation we look forward to exploring further in the months ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nagar, for your valuable insights on the vital roles of millions of transport workers in the informal sector. And indeed, climate actions in transport cannot sideline the people who are actually moving our transport systems, supply chains, and societies forward. And that demands real change. I would like to invite the following speakers to come up to the stage now, who will discuss how a coalition of maritime authorities and seafarer training institutions are striving to ensure African seafarers are not left behind in the transition to zero emission shipping. Joining on the stage is Mr. Stephen Cotton, General Secretary of the International Transport Workers Federation. Ms. Sassy Simbanyoni Mugambi, Head of Secretariat and Acting International Officer from the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa. We also have Maria Cristina Javelana, Head of Fleet for Hafnia, joining us from Dubai. And we also have Ms. Catherine Opon Ajay, Principal Officer on Environment and Safety, Technical Division of the Ghana Maritime Authority. Over the time to you, Mr. Cotton, to kick off this discussion.
Thank you. Good afternoon. You ready for some amazing panelists? Good. So first, it's a fantastic opportunity to bring together some great actors in our sector, but also talk about some of the injustices and challenges we need to respond to. Our brothers and sisters in Africa are major contributors to our global economies, part of the supply chain, but haven't seen quite an equitable share when it comes to work opportunities, when it comes to seafarers, but they're a big part of our maritime world. So in discussion about how do we make sure that we respond to large unemployment numbers in the different African states, what can we do to make maritime more attractive? Liberia is one of the world's biggest shipping registers, but does not have anywhere near enough African men or women on board their ships. So those are issues we'd like to look at. We have many competent, internationally skilled and qualified African seafarers, but we don't have enough. And we're looking at this opportunity when we upskill the world's seafarers, try to address some of those significant challenges. The ITF is a founding partner of the Maritime Just Transition Task Force. And back in Egypt at COP27, we launched a study that said over 800 seafarers out of a community of approximately 2 million. Yes, it's a very small seafarer community that serves the world, will need to be retrained by 2030 on the way to 2050. And then the key questions are, what are they being retrained in with the alternative fuels? Now, this will need significant investment. And as part of the Maritime Just Transition Task Force, that is UN agencies, International Maritime Organization, International Labour Organization, they set the standards. Our industrial partner is the International Chamber of Shipping. So that's the world's ship owners association. And of course, the ITF that represents the seafarers. So we need money and we need the opportunity to invest. We believe that it's very important for our friends to have the opportunity to promote jobs, highly qualified, well-paid, secure jobs, and also to reflect the lack of women unfortunately, in our transport sector. So ultimately, as we move forward, this is part of our collective objective to respond to the predicted global shortage of seafarers. And we want to be able to make an opportunity for our members, our friends in Africa, how can they get an equitable share? So I'm going to move straight in. You've heard our colleagues, we have one online and two with us. So really the key question, and I'll go with Zazie first, which one of the key calls to action in this amazing report that we will launch at the end resonates with you, and how do you think that can change our friends in South Africa for the opportunities?
Thanks, Stephen. I come from a trade union called NUMSA, and we represent around 350 workers across the supply chain in South Africa, including manufacturing and transport. We are very aware that there's a huge trade coming in and out of South Africa, but there are very few jobs for South African and African seafarers. One of the major obstacles which I want to highlight today is the lack of training to increase the number and the quality of jobs. So if we are talking about a just transition for shipping, I must bring a broader political context. The transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy technologies has placed an enormous burden on the working class in South Africa, and we strive to overcome these challenges of our people who are mostly landless, unemployed, and poor. So for us, it is imperative that we get this just transition right. And to build and attract buy-in for climate action, we need to show concrete improvements for African workers. So if we're talking about decarbonizing the shipping industry, African workers in the shipping industry need to capture a meaningful stake in this transition. We can only call it a just transition if it creates sufficient skilled jobs based on labor rights, and that is what we need for African seafarers. So what is our call to action? We are calling on governments and industry to invest not only in technologies, but also into training for existing and future skills, in health and safety to create workplaces that are dignified, a living wage, benefits and conditions that guarantee decent quality of life. And in particular, we are calling for a state investment into training centers, and we believe public financing models are the best way to ensure that the transition in Africa is managed with developmental rather than profit-driven principles. I want to highlight the call to action for governments to increase the number of African cadets absorbed each year, which is closely related to the call on industry to invest in training and certification. The industry must also commit to placing these cadets. For both government and industry, we need specific targets and commitments. We also need gender equality. For both government and industry, must take measures that ensure a high percentage of new cadets are women. So in closing, Stephen, to be very clear, labor rights for Africans must be respected, and a just transition for African seafarers is about a long-term investment, and it's not a short-term fix. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Super contribution. Thank you very much. Catherine, perhaps you want to come in on development around national, regional standards and how we create maritime to be a very attractive place for the best of the African students to flow into our sector.
Yes, thank you, Stephen. So I represent the Ghana Maritime Authority, and as a regulator of the maritime industry in Ghana, we are very committed to promoting seafaring as a career choice for the upcoming young ones. And it's not just about promoting seafaring as a cause, but then we are also emphasizing gender and diversity. So we have about 6,000 seafarers currently. And so as the world transitions towards green fuels for ships, we are looking at the impact on seafarers, which Zazie has mentioned some. So we talk about training and retraining requirements because they are going to be on ships that are using green gases such as hydrogen, ammonia, which come with their own associated risk. And so we need qualified seafarers to be able to take up and work on such ships. So, but as an authority, we know despite the challenges, there is also an opportunity to promote seafaring as a career for the young ones. And so we have launched a campaign called the Go to Sea, which is in line with the IMO's Go to Sea campaign. And this year, that was in August, we were in the northern part of Ghana. We targeted the secondary schools, what a lot of people call the high schools, because that is where you have the young ones, especially the females. These are like students within like 14 to 16 years. And then we introduce seafaring to them because we also don't want to have a future where there will be lack of seafarers to bring us the very important things we need to make our lives comfortable. And so we put about 30 schools together in one event. We engaged with them, promoted seafaring, because there's a lack of knowledge, because a lot of people only know about the traditional onshore jobs. No one really knows about the sea because we hardly interface with the sea. We only see the end products in the stores, in the markets, but the sea, the ships, is very limited knowledge there. And we are very happy that we're able to promote such. You could see the enthusiasm and the interest. I mean, if you think about careers, seafaring should also come together. So this is something we've been promoting, and it's going to go on in the next coming year. We are moving down from the north to the south, and we are targeting as many schools as we can in Ghana. So this is what the authority has done in terms of promoting seafaring as a career option to many young coming. When you look at the unemployment levels in Ghana or even in Africa, I mean, it's a lot. You just mentioned about Liberia having one of the largest ship registries, and still we have a lot of unemployment, youth unemployment. And so if people get to know, young people get to know that there's this opportunity, certainly we'll be looking at bringing down the unemployment levels. So, I mean, a lot. I'm just happy because I am female, and I would like to empower and encourage as many young females to take up careers in shipping or seafaring. I mean, there's a lot of beauty in diversity and inclusion. Thank you.
Excellent contribution. I'm just checking if Maria is still there online. So we've heard from Zazi about an equitable share, a standard, a living wage. And we've heard from Catherine about the rich opportunity to bring educated young Africans. So as in true tripartite tradition, we're going to ask Maria to come in with her view from the commercial aspect, from an employer's perspective. Maria, over to you.
Hi, Stephen. It's nice to see you and sharing with you in this kind of platform. If you can still recall, we often see each other way back in the Philippines when I was still a cadet in MAB, right? Yeah, shipping is indeed such a small world for us. I agree with everything, and in the perspective of the owners and the commercial side, of course, with whatever we are doing, right? It all boils down to the focus with our crew, with our people, because they are our priority. I mean, the growth of our company, the growth of our business also relies from the people who are working hard on our ships. We may have all the sophisticated equipment that we will have on board, right? With all these new regulations that will come into force, but all of that, it will not put into proper actions when we don't have the right people. And with us in Hafnia, it is always in the heart of our strategy, because we are putting this as part of our ESG strategy and commitment. And one part of it is on the social part, where we initiated already the MOU with the Ghana Maritime University, and that is in RMU. As of now, we have an active of 32 female Ghanaian seafarers that has been already on board our vessels, and we are continuing with close cooperation with the university. So we ensure that we focus on building the basics from these cadets with the RMU and whatever knowledge that they have there, and then we put them on board our ship to enhance their skills and put it in applications, what knowledge they have gained from the university. And we also analyze this gap vice versa, taking into account the new regulations that come into place. So this is not just an overnight job, Stephen, and for everyone's knowledge. So it requires a commitment from us, and that is what we're doing. So we are heavily engaged not only with our seafarers, but also with the university that we are working on and those people that we are getting from the African region. Because as I have said, this is already in the heart and strategy of Hafnia.
Okay. Getting some very strong time messaging. Maria, well, I should just explain then what MARP is. So Maria will be a graduate, so joined as a seafarer cadet in the Philippines. The Maritime Academy of Asia Pacific is probably one of the best maritime schools in the world and is owned, operated by the biggest democratic seafarers union in the world, our affiliate AMASUP. So congratulations, Maria, because we're promoting gender, but you're a prime example. I don't mean to embarrass you, but you beat the system, and that's also part of our challenge as one of the first female maritime cadets. And now you have a very powerful job in a shipping company, reshaping your story to the benefit of the maritime society. So in closing, I think I'm being told, and we'll just be doing a photo. I'm not quite sure how we're going to get Maria in the photo. This document, which is available for all of you on the various websites, is our call for action. And as we've outlined, everything we've discussed today, it's a tripartite model. It's the unions on behalf of the collective workers in the world and potential workers, but it's also governments cannot build good institutions without land infrastructure. But of course, it's critical that we have the employers who also set demands on us on what skills we need and what the academic qualifications and the physical attributes that we need to make sure that women can be equally given an opportunity. So I'm going to ask you all, my team, to do a photo. Hold up the thing. If you haven't read it, please read it. It's a very powerful model. Here we hear a lot of talk about policy, but it's also that we can create practical, implementable paths to deliver outcomes. And that's what we believe this is. So thank you. Please give my amazing panelists a massive round of applause. And we'll just do a photo. And please be in touch with any one of us if you need more information so that we can kind of engage you in this process. Thank you all very much for coming. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our speakers and their commitment and ambition to make sure that transport workers are on board on this journey towards a clean shipping industry. Now, today is also a special day because we want to talk about a breakthrough for land transport. What do we need to break away from? We need to break away from the current paradigm of how people and goods are moved and how transport systems are powered. We must drastically reduce emissions and energy demand while improving access to integrated land transport systems that do not use fossil fuels. Sounds a lot of things to do. But the focus that the land transport sector is that it has predominantly focused on electrification of vehicles in many parts of the world. While it's very important to note that it's important to decarbonize transport through electrification, fully reaching the transport sector's potential is so much more than that. So I'm really excited to welcome the following leaders to join the stage, who will share further insights on the critical levers and opportunities to address this. I would like to welcome His Excellency, Minister Juan Carlos Munoz, Minister of Transport and Telecommunications of Chile, to join me here on the stage. Second chair, thank you. And Ms. Ju Ha, Land Transport Specialist of the High-Level Climate Champions team. Mr. Jamie Leather, Transport Director of the Asian Development Bank, if you want to take the other side. And also Mr. Felipe Ramirez, Urban Mobility Director of the World Resources Institute. And I will join you here. Thank you and welcome again. Wow, it's a great panel and I'm very excited. But let's start with the lady, if that's okay. Yeah, because Ju here is with us to represent the High Level Champions team. And among the sustainable transport discourse, we often talk about the avoid, shift, and improve framework. But there's actually an implicit and inherent hierarchy across avoid and, and avoid and shift. So can you tell us a little bit more about what the Champions team is working on right now to make sure that this hierarchy or this, narrative is coming across?
Absolutely. Thank you all. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. It's an absolute pleasure to be here and to have the opportunity to talk about such an important important mark for us, which is the launching of the Avoid and Shift Breakthrough, which our climate champion has spoken about, Nigar, just in her opening remarks. I think I have some slides if they can go up. Oh, they're just behind me. But yeah, anyways, I'll make work.
Can we show the slides on the actually in front of you?
Yeah, okay. Sorry about that. Just locating myself here. But before getting into the weeds of it, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what is a breakthrough. So we understand the breakthrough as a moment that marks significant advance in the transformation of an economic sector. So really looking into that critical new level of infrastructure, technology development, reduction in production costs, improved health of a natural ecosystem, or shift in societal forms. So, and we understand that is only possible when it's done by the whole of society. So if all the actors are working together to come into that goal. And so just going back to that your question on the avoid and shift improve framework, I mean, we do see that there is growing evidence that those avoid and shift strategies can account for 40 to 60% of transport emissions reductions. So there is a huge opportunity there. But nevertheless, for instance, if we look into the NDCs, they currently have a strong focus on improved measures. So I have the number here. It's about 52% of measures that focus on improve, and then 38% on shift, and then only 10% on avoid. So how do we bridge that gap? So how do we look into growing the potential of avoid and shift measures to reduce emissions from the transport sector? So if you look at the screen, where the little box where it says avoid and shift, that's what we are that we were talking about and launching today. So if we go to the next slide, you'll be able to see what the actual avoid and shift breakthrough is about. It is about doubling the share of energy efficient and fossil-free forms of land transport for people and goods by 2030 by focusing on shifts to public transport, walking, cycling, and rail freight, as well as electric vehicles and railways. So you see, it is an ambitious goal, but with flexibility naturally ingrained into it, so that governments can also achieve this target in whatever way is possible given their natural context. And so this text, I think for a lot of us that are in this room, it's not something that we haven't seen before. This is based on the call to action that was launched by SLOCAT and at COP28, and it already has over 60 signatories and 2 countries leading, one of which is Chile. And so we are very happy to be here with Minister Munoz to talk about it. And so the call to action that was launched last year has all the 9 action areas that are in the screen that I appreciate that they are very small to read right now, but they are all reflected in the avoid and shift breakthrough through the 5 levers of change that we see there on technology, demand, finance, policy, and civil society as well. So I think I'll stop here, but I would just ask that we go back to the previous page and give everyone the opportunity to use the QR code to read more about the avoid and shift breakthrough. And just to say that this is a launching moment. So it means that this is the beginning of the work, and we are keen on working with the community to continue to support parties as non-state actors to deliver on this ambitious target. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jill. I mean, as a non-party stakeholder, I'm actually really, really grateful for the Champions team's effort in not actually just starting a brand new agenda, yet another narrative, yet another agenda, but actually building on something that a wide range of stakeholders and signatories, including countries, including civil society, and all kinds of actors, building on that call to action and taking it to the global stage. And I think it really shows a stronger connection that brings non-party stakeholders to the stage in our discussion today. So thanks a lot, Jill. And as we have mentioned, Minister, if I could come to you now, that Chile has been such a pioneer in avoid ship transport, and that the country is now on the way to achieve, to electrify 100% of public transport by 2040. Is that right? What is your secret? What is the challenges, the good and the bads in achieving such an ambition, and especially for smaller cities as well, because cities across the countries are very different. How do you make sure that this can be applied?
Thank you very much, Alice. Well, I would like to, before stepping into electromobility, which is something we feel very proud of what we've achieved, I would like to go into the Avoid Shift Improve platform. It's very important that we avoid the tendency to go to electromobility too fast. The emissions that each of us make need to drop. And in the transport sector, that means that we need to either make, let me put it as a formula of multiplication of 4 factors. How many trips we make, how many kilometers per trip, how much energy per kilometer, how many emissions per unit of energy. And electromobility only affects the last one. Notice that if our trips were half distance, the emissions will be half. But not only that, if the distance is shorter, most likely we will walk, bike, or take public transport. So we should avoid, I think, going too fast into electromobility. It's very important that we foster biking, walking, and using public transport. And regarding electromobility, yes, we have that. This is part of our policy towards making public transport more attractive. We have passed a law that attracts important funding for public transport nationwide. It's around $2 billion per year up to 2032. One part of this will be managed by the local government. 3/4 will be managed by the ministry. And that has allowed us to move the, to invest in much better public transport service than what we would have if we were to fund public transport only by the fares. In most of our countries, the public transport we can fund only with fares is very limited and not high quality, and will never attract users that have a car. So it's very relevant that we convince our governments that putting money into public transport is not wasting money, it's investing in a better society. And that's something that needs to be very up in our agendas. There's no way that we can achieve this without funding. And in our city, Santiago de Chile, we have been able to have now currently a fleet of around 2,500 electric buses, which we are very proud to say that is the city outside from China with more electric buses in the world. And that's something that is very impressive for a city, for a country that is not really a high-income country. And that, of course, has been very attractive for users that see that the society, that the Chilean society is investing in making public transport more attractive. And now we're going into the rest of the country with one of the main issues now is not only that we will be in the next 18 months adding 1,200 extra buses for Santiago, but also going to the rest of the country. There's a very important gap between the capital city and the rest of the country, and one of the main goals of our government is to close that gap, to give this sense of pride also to the rest of the public transport users elsewhere. Another issue here is how do we make biking more attractive? and we have a plan, and we're investing on this, on building 800 kilometers of bike path in Santiago City, and also in other cities of the country. I think this is something that is urgent, and I think that investing in public transport, not only in buses, also in trains. We are expanding now our metro network in Santiago from its 150 kilometers by building 3 extra lines that will add 75 extra kilometers in the next, let's say, 7 to 8 years. So we're very proud of what we have achieved, and we hope that by providing better public transport, by providing better biking facilities, more people will be convinced to leave their cars at home and take alternatives. And that takes us to the next question: is how do we divide the urban space so that public transport and bike is really, really convenient?
Thank you very much, Minister. I mean, it's really interesting that a minister tell us not to go so fast into something, right? Because oftentimes we talk about the urgency of climate action, and then there's like this urgency, acceleration. These are kind of the verbs that we always use when we talk about climate change. But it is indeed that getting the right transport solutions doesn't necessarily meaning that making that decision way too fast. And in fact, a lot of the core solutions for sustainable low carbon transport requires more long-term structural changes that actually influence behavioral change, the way that we plan our cities, like you're saying, and making projects attractive, which we'll come into that, later in this discussion. But now I would first like to talk to Felipe and talk a little bit more about how we move goods, because we know that urban freight actually accounts for about 25% of the total transport emissions, and that is a significant amount and is a very key puzzle that we cannot miss. So how do you think we can match freight with the afford shift context? Like, what would that mean, and how have you seen any good examples that comes out of it?
Sure. Thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation again. Let me maybe start with just some general numbers that talks about the how fast actually we need to move and what we need to do now. I will start a little bit against what Juan Carlos said in terms of the awareness of how fast we need to move in electric mobility, but maybe you're saying it because you are leading the world in electric mobility. So in terms of electric cars, we are now in 10%, and we need to go to 85% by 2030. In terms of public buses in the world, we are in 4%, and we need to go to 60%. Your fleet in Santiago might be already 15, 20% already. So it's growing fast. And in 2 and 3 wheelers, we need to go from 50% to 85%. So definitely there is a need for sectoral targets in our community. And we need to understand that from the perspective of what you was explaining us, and it's how fossil fuel free transport can be achieved and what the breakthrough means in terms of avoid and shift. And I think successful means, and if I were on Juan Carlos' shoes, I would like this community to be telling me no more of what I already know somehow and what all this crowd knows in terms of transportation, but a little bit more on how and where do we get money? Where is the finance for these things that we need to achieve? And how exactly we should be doing projects in order to be able to have a better portfolio. Going to your question specifically, in terms of goods, it's actually quite difficult in cities because we have different kinds of freight. And that means that we need to understand how exactly that moves from concrete to mattresses, food. That means that actually the cold chain and the freight that is consolidated or disconsolidated needs to be understood and how exactly we move that in our cities. And of course, on the other hand, is decarbonization. So we have 2 different things. One is efficiency and how goods move in our cities, and the other one is decarbonization. In terms of decarbonization, in WRI, we have been working in 2 main projects. One is NDC where in China, we have been working on understanding what kind of decarbonization we need, how exactly that electrification should happen. And what we have found is actually that because of the logistics that it's involved in moving goods, What we are needing right now is swapping batteries in that specific region. And that is making it possible because it reduces, of course, the time of charging, and it helps a lot in terms of the logistics. And in India, where it's another place in the world where electric mobility is moving quite fast, we have launched eFast. Actually, the government launched eFast, but we are part of the effort, which is an accelerator for sustainable transport, specifically in freight. This is quite similar to what happened with the electric buses in India, in terms of this accelerator, trying to aggregate demand and to find out what exactly we can do as a whole country, which has 1.4 billion people, and that should move faster in that sense. And last week, actually, during G20, we launched something similar in Brazil because we want to push that harder in Latin America as well. So we have this kind of accelerators in our region to move faster in this electrification. But as I mentioned before, and this is where I absolutely agree with Juan Carlos, it's not just about electrifying. We need to see the other picture. In terms of public transportation, we are talking about walking, biking, and all this network that we need to build, those 800 kilometers that you're mentioning, that needs to support the city. In terms of freight, we are talking about what kind of freight is moved in our cities and how logistics should be done. Because if we just raise the problem of electrification, we are not really solving the problem. Early this morning, Luca Lorre was mentioning something that I love, is diversification of roads. And it's how exactly we also understand how resilient we should be in our cities, in our countries, so we understand what kind of roads we should be looking for routes and doing something different. But again, I think we as community need to understand what exactly is what the decision makers need to hear. If I were in Juan Carlos' shoes again, I would love to hear from us a bit more of where is the money, how to get it, and how to do that, make to reality in action in our cities.
Thank you very much, Felipe. It is true. I think you bring out a very important point. We cannot achieve ambition without finance or making our sustainable transport solutions attractive. That was the word the minister was using. And we can't have finance until these projects are bankable. Now, Jamie, if I could go to you, and I have to ask, when I was preparing this, I asked ChatGPT because ChatGPT is now supposedly like the magic mirror that knows everything now. So I was like, ChatGPT, what is the most bankable transport projects of all? The answers: toll roads and highways, airport modernization and expansion, somewhere down there also urban public transport systems, and way down the list, walking and cycling infrastructure. Okay, how do you react to this?
Don't trust ChatGPT.
We welcome reactions from other. From other panelists to challenge ChatGPT. Yeah, but Jamie, let's go with you first.
A lot of that depends how you assess and what balances. From a financial perspective, the financial rate of return is absolutely that list you provided. It's the money you're receiving from the fares, from the toll revenues, from the operating licenses. If it's purely a financial investment, that is where the money should go. But sustainable transport, avoiding shifting, is much broader than that. Livable cities are much broader than just financial returns. And I think there's a fundamental need to rethink access, mobility, evaluation criteria. It's not about time savings or vehicle operating cost savings. Sorry, a bit of a transport history lesson. That was from sort of 70 years ago, surfacing rural roads. That's where that methodology came from. Cycling and walking may not be quicker time savings, but it will certainly make a city far more attractive. And if a city's far more attractive, more people want to live there, the economy grows, the development, people are lifted out of poverty with that accessibility because they're getting more equitable and inclusive access to those services. So I think there's a fundamental shift. The list you gave, absolutely, if you're just looking at financial returns. If you're looking at broader economic and social returns, you would get a very different list.
Thank you very much, Jamie. Anyone else would like to respond to ChatGPT before?
Yeah. Yeah, ChatGPT, I think, works on what has been already written. We'll look at what documents that are already there. And what we're talking here is about the future. So don't expect ChatGPT to give you the right answer about what needs to be happening. ChatGPT will tell us what has happened in the past. And we know that the past has not been the right decision. So I don't think that in this case we should be trusting just the ChatGPT, but instead to what we can deliver in this audience.
I think that's an excellent answer because it is indeed, I think a lot of times when we think ChatGPT can really answer all of the questions, but those questions being answered in the past and it's really not solving the problems, looking at the future. Felipe.
Yeah, if I may, I completely agree on that appreciation. And actually, we just released a climate finance paper, which is showing what's happening in terms of how much money is going where, geographically speaking, but also in terms of transport modes. And as you're saying, ChatGPT can tell us a little bit of that already. But what it cannot tell us is how much we are needing in the other transport modes, as walking, biking, and we all know there is no money yet going and flowing that way. And that's what we actually are needing. And that needs our heads, our work to be able to make that possible.
Yeah, there is some money going that direction, I should add.
No, not enough.
Not enough.
Where are the some money coming from?
Okay. In Asian Development Bank, we have positioned ourselves as the climate bank for Asia and the Pacific, and that includes putting our money in greener and more sustainable support to our client governments. There's a $100 billion target cumulative to 2030 for climate finance of our money, but our money is very small, so it's used to catalyze other investment. On the non-motorized transport, cycling, walking, if we did build a big transit system, public transport, metro or bus system, we would ensure that the access egress arrangements are as important as the big capital civil engineering components. Happy to announce earlier this year, we got $170 million of GCF money, which with our money will come up to $500 million in total, so $500 million US dollars for public transport and non-motorized transport improvements in cities across 7 of the developing member countries of ADB. So yes, we're definitely trying to use our money in that direction. It's not just the big infrastructure, but if it is, it's also ensuring that there's accessibility. And in some cases, we are looking at just pure non-motorized investments as well. So in Manila, the pedestrian greenway project as an example.
Thank you very much. I don't mean to make ChatGPT an enemy in here. I think it's a very useful tool for a lot of things, but it's just, I guess it's quite honest, like it doesn't decorate much and it's just building on, again, in the past. And we talk about looking at the future. And in fact, the next session, we will be looking at the future because we know this COP is a window of opportunity for the next round of NDCs. Countries are working on towards the next round of NDCs. So if we could just have a last round of response, what is your key takeaways for a forward shift breakthrough for NDC 3.0? Maybe we start with Jill, with the champions. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, again, this is a key opportunity at the moment as countries are revising their NDCs and will be delivering one hopefully by February next year. But obviously, that process will go through all the way to COP30. And we wanted to highlight some of the work that the community has done in supporting countries to enhance ambition in their NDCs. I think for me, it would be obviously as someone who is focused on working on the avoidance shift breakthrough is seeing more and more mentions or more ambitious targets by a greater number of countries on avoidance shift measures within their NDCs, so that we can move on from the 38% and 10% respectively to even more.
Thank you very much, Jill. Can I go to Felipe, Jamie, and then the minister?
Sure. I think definitely we need to see more of walking and biking in our NDCs in the next NDC rounds. That's an aim. We hope to see that definitely. And aligned to Jamie's answer before, I think every single policy in every single city from now on should say that no, there is no road that is built in any city which don't have walking paths and biking paths, and that's a must. And that align to accessibility, so we have real networks in our cities, so we really can connect public transportation with the pedestrian paths and the biking paths.
In terms of NDCs, I want to reference back to some work we're doing on data and policy assessments, the Asian Transport Outlook, or the Asian Transport Observatory as it's being rebranded. The analysis there on transport policy documents and NDCs, transport within the NDCs, is demonstrating a huge imbalance. There's only around 10 to 20% of the climate-related aspects of transport policies that are finding their ways into the NDC. A quick win would be to look at the transport policies across many governments and then ensure that those climate-related approved transport policies are immediately moved across to the NDCs across all areas. More will be required, but that's a very quick win.
Thank you. Yeah, I would like to make a little correction. I didn't try to say that electromobility should be slowed down. I think it has to be speed up. What I think it needs to be slowed down is the idea that this is the only tool we have. I mean, we need to look also at how do we make our trips shorter? How do we foster public transport? How do we foster biking? If we do that, probably our public transport, our electric buses and our trains will be much more productive if we do all things at once. And we know that we need to make our public transport and cycling more attractive, and this is urgent, and we need to do this as soon as possible. And so let me add one extra point into this ideas, which is that, or a low-hanging fruit I see. Very often we have that our authorities are promoting public transport, promoting cycling, but still use the car. And I think this is a very significant failure. I think we need to have authorities that use the public transport and the bike daily in their commuting. And what my experience is that by doing that, we build a lot of political support. And at the same time, by having authorities that use the public transport, or the transport mode that they are promoting, we can identify opportunities for improvement while we travel. And I think that this is a decisive step towards building more pride, determination, and trust towards transit and biking.
Thank you very much. I think yes, a round of applause, please, to all of our speakers, really. What I have heard really is that ambition is a word, but ambition means specific, means comprehensive. You know, when we want to think about transport and NDCs, we need to make sure that it's being reflected in a way that is not just about one type of solutions, but it's comprehensive enough that it represents a broad range of spectrums of sustainable transport solutions, passenger and freight transport, making them specific enough so that it will attract funding, that it will encourage investors and policy change institutional frameworks to provide the enabling environment for sustainable transport solutions to be attractive, to be bankable, to make sure that it continues to be mainstreamed in national policy making. So thank you so much for our speakers today. And thank you so much. And perhaps we can take a very quick picture if needed. And after that, I will pass the floor to my colleague, Olivia. A round of applause to them again. Thank you. And now I will invite my colleagues Olivia to join us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alice, and thank you so much, everyone, for the really insightful conversation so far. Now we're moving on to the third segment on enhancing capacity to raise ambition for transport in the third round of NDCs due in February. So we're about to have a series of lightning talks to showcase modal actions across public transport, popular and active transport, and rail, and the different NDC templates that have been developed by the transport community to support countries in setting more ambitious, robust, and actionable targets and roadmaps for transport. So this session will highlight some key themes in the development of NDCs, ensuring that targets, goals, measures, governance, and investment approach is clearly set out. But first, we'd really love to get your inputs and reflections. So we've set up a Menti meter that we'll come back to at the end of the session to hear some of your thoughts. But please go to www.menti.com and use code 74305314 to share your thoughts. We'd really like to know what you think governments should prioritize for transport in their next round of NDCs. Do you have any good examples of government action on aligning NDC transport ambition and action? And how can non-party stakeholders and governments work together through the Marrakech Partnership to support implementation of NDC ambitions on transport? So without further ado, we'll get stuck into the lightning talks. So could I please invite our speakers up to the stage? We've got Ms. Jill Warren, the CEO of the European Cyclist Federation, and also a membership of the Partnership on Action, Travel and Health, or the PATH Coalition. We've got Antonia Hug, Chief Sustainability Officer from Keolis, who will be talking about public transport. We've got Mr. Turel Abbasli, advisor to the CEO of Azerbaijan Railways, and Ms. Fernanda Rivera, former Director General of Road Safety and Sustainable Urban Mobility at the Secretaría de Movilidad, Mexico City, who will talk about popular transport. Is she here? Oh, yes, sorry, my bad. Long day. Great. So first, over to you, Jill. We'd like to know what the role is that active travel can play in supporting the delivery and implementation of NDCs, what work has PATH led to support governments with including active travel within their NDCs, and what examples do you have of where a government has done this well?
Okay, thanks very much. So we know that, generally speaking, walking and cycling, so active travel, has historically been under-prioritized and underfunded around the world. That's partly because people haven't always considered it to be, and still in many places don't consider it to be, fully fledged modes of transport. You know, they always think of, let's say, road transport, rail, other things, but not necessarily walking and cycling. So knowing that, we wanted to look at the baseline and see where we're at. So as PATH, the Partnership for Active Travel and Health, we did some groundbreaking research to look at the existing NDCs. Where do they contain references to walking, cycling, and or active travel? And beyond that, do they have an existing walking policy, cycling policy, or active travel policy in place? So the conclusion of that really was that more ambition and action is needed just about everywhere to move the needle on walking and cycling. So about 25% of NDCs make some sort of reference to active travel, but very often it's a cursory reference without any ambition or action attached to that. So really a lot of potential to do much more. And you know, we know that the potential is there. We know that 60% of urban trips are 5 kilometers or less. And but over half of those are made by motorized vehicle. And the potential is even higher if you factor e-bikes in there, because people are much willing to go a bit farther when they're on an e-bike. So the potential there could be up to 75% of urban trips that could be, let's say, cyclable, if not walkable. And a statistic from the IPCC report from last year says that more walking and cycling and public transport can cut transport emissions in half by 2030. So we really want the NDCs to support that kind of potential. So The five main areas that we think policies and actions in NDCs should cover are infrastructure for walking and cycling to make it safe and accessible, campaigns to support shifts in people's mobility habits, land use planning to ensure proximity and quality of access to everyday services, integration with public transport to support longer sustainable journeys, and capacity building, because we also know that the traffic planners of today very often were taught in a very car-centric world, and these more specialized skills aren't always there. So in a nutshell, that's kind of where we're at and where we want to go. And I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you so much, Jill, for highlighting that action gap or that gap within NDCs and the actions that governments could take. Next, we'll move on to Anya and Antonio Hug, who will talk about public transport. So what is the role that public transport can play in supporting the delivery and implementation of NDCs? What projects have Keolis led that have supported this? And what do governments need to do to include in the NDCs to ensure public transport actions are leveraged and implemented?
So it's great talking just after the active part, because indeed we need to think about the city's sustainabilities as a whole, and public transport and active modes goes well together. Actually, we do see a complementary mobility patterns where you could take a bike to a metro or walk to a bus. So indeed, it's something we need to work on together. So if we talk about public transport, there's more mentions about public transport in the NDCs, about 2/3, but still, as we heard before today, too much focus on the improve part, but not yet enough on the avoid and shift part. So a lot of very interesting things have been said here about how we could work on that. I wonder to what extent the avoid part is a little bit avoided, because it's difficult to address actually. Maybe also there we need to think differently about the cities, because to avoid travel, we need to think about the housing and then the way the city is constructed. So, and also when we talk about measures, it's difficult to find cross-sector measures. But I wonder to what extent we shouldn't think about having like transport performance index for housing. In many countries now, there are energy efficiency indexes, and maybe that is something we should think about transport too, because in one way, public transport has existed for decades, and still we're not yet there. So maybe the link to the urbanization should be stronger in the upcoming NDCs. When we talk about shift, it might sound basic, but we need to think more about really understanding the mobility patterns. We tend to focus too much on the commute part. Actually, when we look at Europe, I don't have the figures for the whole world, only 2 out of 3 persons between 15 and 64 are actually working. So that means that we have a lot of, and that's already for active population. So we need to think about the population as a whole, also those who are elderly, those who are younger, to really address the transport within the cities. We also heard before about freight and transport of goods. That is probably also something when you think about sustainability cities that we need to address. There could probably be stronger links and not be seen as 2 separate sectors. So, of course, as a public transport operator, we put in a lot of effort, both for the improved part, really cutting the greenhouse gas emissions per kilometer and also per passenger kilometer. And when we come to the shift, we pay a lot of attention to designing the best offer. And that is, of course, there is the infrastructure question, but it sometimes could also be really the design might sound basic, but having the right timetables that fit to what people really need.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that really clear overview. Next to Azerbaijan Railways, what is the role that rail can play in supporting the delivery and implementation of NDCs? What projects have Azerbaijan Railways led that can support the implementation of Azerbaijan's NDC ambitions? And what do governments need to include in their NDCs to ensure rail actions are leveraged and implemented?
Okay, thanks a lot. So I just want to emphasize the four key directions and recommendations that we are moving on. And that was the part of this COP29, the initiatives like ambition, integration, implementation, and funding. So that's four directions that we aim to fulfill. So just a couple of words about each one. Ambition, that's our railway ambition is to make more electrified roads and also to move from the direct current to alternating current. So that's part of this electrification. So to say the ADY currently has 63% of the railway network electrified. And within last year, 100% of all passenger freight and 80% of this freight was done by the electrified road. So that signifies our role and ambitions for this green the transport mode. So in terms of integration, just want to say that 9 out of 17 the Sustainable Development Goals that was been declared. So ADY is directly contributing to 9 of it. So our ambitions, our let's say the targets, so it has direct implication in this SDGs. So about the implementation, I can say that we focus on the digitalization, renewable energy, and intermodal connectivity. So on the digitalization, I can mention that we currently just we by the way signed this the contract with ADB about this the digitalization. So around 50 million USD was allocated to renew all the infrastructures of ADY, and it will improve this paperless documentation. It will improve the efficiency, reduce this let's say the waste time, etc. So it will bring quite a number of let's say the improvements to overall to ADY. And about this renewable energy sector, I can say that we have a couple of initiatives that we want to utilize, and one of them is that we currently started the project to build this technical service center for Stadler the rails, and that will be one of a kind in this region. So, and on top of that, on the roof actually we are building the solar panels. And by doing that, we hope that, let's say, more than 80% of energy consumption will be substituted by the solar panels. So that's our, let's say, the first big project in this let's say regards. But we are committed to continue these kind of projects and these initiatives. And in terms of funding, we want to say that we see really big opportunities in the green funding, because as I mentioned before, the railway is one of the, let's say, the lowest carbon emission transport mode, and we see huge potential for the further projects in this sector. And to name some figures, 1 kilometer of rail, the passenger just emits 14 grams of carbon. So compared to different modes of transportation, it's like 20 times less. So that highlights how improving the rail sector and rail transportation can help to reduce carbon emissions. And just to give some other numbers, so as you know, this year it was declared in Azerbaijan the year of the solidarity with green world. And with this, we have our national commitment. So by 2030, we plan to reduce our green gas emissions 35%, and by 2050, it's going to be 40%. That's our national, let's say, the targets, and ADY is closely following and committing its own targets according to this our national, let's say, targets. And just give a couple of examples. Within 1 year, last year, we have reduced the natural gas consumption 5%, the natural gas by 16, energy consumption by 5, water consumption by 23%, and carbon emission by 9%. So these figures are given in our first sustainability report of ADY that we just recently launched, and we are committed to further enhance this number. So it's not our cap. So it's not, I will say, the higher cap. So we'll definitely work on to further improve this, I'll say, our national ambitions. So in terms of how government needs to can support in NDCs, we can say that we expect and we want to have more support from government in these green finance initiatives, and so government state can provide more funding to this kind of projects and electrification projects, enhancing the connectivity of the rail sector, and also I believe the second can be also the subsidies. So as you know, the freight passenger transport in many cities, in many countries actually in the world, so it's supported by government as a part of this social, let's say, development. And we expect government to pay more attention in this subsidies. And by doing that, I believe we can have more, let's say, usage of the rail and more promoting it.
Thank you very much for that overview of all of the actions that you've taken and the impact of those so far. It's really, really exciting. Thank you. And then next we've got online Ms. Fernanda Rivera, former General Director of Road Safety and Sustainable Urban Mobility from Mexico City. So what is the role that popular transport can play in supporting the delivery and implementation of NDCs? What projects have Mexico City led that have supported this? What do governments need to include in their NDCs to ensure popular transport actions are leveraged and implemented?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? I'm Fernanda Rivera. I'm really happy to be here. It's a great honor for me. And we have heard about bicycles, we have heard about public transport and railways. So I want to speak about popular transportation. Popular transport is one of the most important roles. It has an important role in a lot of global cities in the global south, because it represents the first and last mile connection to our main public transport structures. At least in Mexico City, we know that 7 million trips are made on a daily basis in microbuses, in 2- and 3-wheelers. So they are part of our public transport network. So the first step is to recognize that. I'm going to tell you about our modernization program of popular transport that we had in Mexico City. We had a really ambitious plan to change and modernize the whole fleet of these old buses that they are called in Mexico microbuses, that they are like 35 years old. And what we are trying to promote is to have this fleet change, but also a change in the operational scheme, where we can have better units, better buses, but also the inclusion of these transport operators. So we give a bonus of $27,000 for the scrapping of these old buses, where we can substitute with these new buses, and we are helping the whole operators to make these companies. We have to work with them. That's the best experience we have. Also, we recognize that we have cycle taxis, 2- and 3-wheelers that they're operating in our cities. So we are working with them to have these new pedal-assisted electrical bicycles, where they can change these first and last mile connections with a more sustainable mode of transport. This popular transportation mainly moves women and girls. So it's not only a sustainable perspective, it's also a gender perspective, because women, we have to recognize that we walk more, we use more public transportation. So this is part of a just transition. Just to let you know, it's important to work with all these workers, these popular transportations, and recognize that social justice is not only for the users, because these services usually attend the peripheral areas, but social justice can also be for all these workers that are part of our transportation system, even they not part of the structural one. Also, we have to recognize that to deliver NDCs, having this perception and the integration of popular transportation in our goals will be important, because in global cities from the global south, they are a main part of the transport network. So this is the second part to recognize. And last but not least, having this gender perspective and recognizing that public transportation and popular transportation is mainly used by women would also improve the quality of the trips of 50% of the population. So this is what we have made in Mexico City, recognizing popular transportation that is part of this important network. So like we say in Mexico, el transporte popular existe porque resiste. We think that popular transport exists because it resists. So being included in our NDCs will be really important to have these achievements, to have a better sustainability and a gender perspective. So thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here today.
Thank you very much for that and for really highlighting the equity and gender perspectives as well on this to ensure a just transition. We've now got a couple of minutes to take some questions from the audience, but can I also give a reminder on the Mentimeter? I don't know if we can get the details up. It would be really good to get any insights that you have that we can consider when we promote our NDC materials. But does anyone in the room have a question that they would like to ask any of our speakers? Would you like to just go for it?
I wanted to add a comment maybe on what we just heard, because I think that's we actually see as well that 60% of our travelers are women, but actually it's a very male-dominated workforce, so it's more about 20%. So we indeed have a kind of a very important topic to address. And when you just look at numbers, you do say that it's not. It is clearly to be put on the top of the agenda, and we are trying to do also, because to make public transport attractive, of course, making it safe, and secure is indeed very important.
Thanks. That's a really good point. We can't enable a shift to these lower carbon modes unless these lower carbon modes are safe for the users. So thanks so much. Any questions? Yes, please. Let me get a mic. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a wonderful session and like related to walking and cycling. So I very appreciate Jill and Philip and everyone talking about walking and cycling today. So I come from an organization which promotes cycling, Bikes and Bikes Global. I'm the India head of an organization which promotes cycling for commute. I work with several ministries, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Sports and Health Ministry, to incorporate cycling and walking in daily behavior of citizens. In India, there's a program launch called Mission Life, that is lifestyle for sustainable environment, which promotes active mobility. My question to maybe everyone who is related to that topic, in our country, it is difficult, like when funding comes, as someone said, the chat GPT showed that cycling and walking infrastructure, it has the least amount of funding. Apart from the infrastructure, there is a very less amount of funds which is diverted to the organizations working for promoting behavioral change among citizens. So I would want to answer to that how can we rope in global funds or funds for such organizations? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your question. I think we'll come to Jill first for that one.
Thanks very much. Right, so you did bring up a very important point. So it's not only getting the infrastructure on the ground so that people feel safe enough to do more walking and cycling, or to start it in the first place, but also campaigns and promotion to support that shift in people's mobility habits is important. And civil society, NGOs, are a very important part of that. And philanthropy is very important to supporting the whole ecosystem of advocates who do that very important work. I think we do see more philanthropic funding going into active mobility, which is really, really great to see. We'd like to see a lot more of it. One program that I would highlight is the Bloomberg-funded GDCI, Global, I think I'm getting the acronym wrong, but this initiative that has selected 10 cities to really support, and in a competitive process, they had over 300 cities, I think, apply, to really give funding and technical support to help them, cover every aspect of becoming more of a cycling city. And I know the mayor of Quelimane, Mozambique, is here, and his city is one of the cities that's benefited from that funding. Now, we don't all have that, but certainly I think philanthropy is a big part of it. And I wish I had the answer of exactly there's where you go to get it. It's But yeah, thank you for your work. It's very important.
Thank you very much, Jill, and for that question. We've just got a few minutes, so I don't know if any of the other speakers wanted to give any reflections on the kind of role of government in behavioural change.
I could also highlight the work that's been done by UITP, so it's the International Union for Public Transport, that has worked on an NDC template to facilitate for governments how to implement public transport targets in their new NDCs. So that's very important. Behavior change is tricky, I think. It is surely something about making it be cool or making it be attractive, or use whatever you word or you like. I also think that sometimes, I mean, behavior change could also be by making other options less attractive. So indeed, some measures in cities having tolls or having restrictions for private cars, it should be part of the panel of actions that we do apply and policies.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Maybe a couple of words about this intermodal connectivity. So when we talk about this city mobility, we have to make sure that they're all connected to each other. So this genuine intermodal connectivity is key, actually. Because like in development of the city urban planning in Azerbaijan, so we consider how this railway is interacting with, let's say, metro or buses. So it all should be working as a one organism, we can say. Like, so it's really key when considering this shift, let's say, to the green policies, green transportation, not to miss out this intermodal.
Thank you so much. And Fernanda, would you like to provide any reflections online?
Yes, thank you. I think that the best thing to do is to make things easy, that people can choose in an easy way which mode of transport they want to choose. So if we design cities with good sidewalks, with good cycle paths, with good public transport connections and railways, we're going to have people using public transport, walking and cycling. At least in the global south, we know that most of the people move by walking, cycling, and public transport. So our goal is not to get them off this public transport and walking. We just have to maintain them in there. So that's an important and a different activity rather than in the north, in the global north, where we have to take people off the car. Here we have to give this quality trip so people can keep using public transport, walking and cycling as their mode of transport.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the excellent question and fantastic responses. That brings us to the end of this session. I've just got a couple of bits of feedback that we received over the Mentimeter. So first, what should governments prioritize for transport in their NDCs, targets, comprehensive policies, but backed up by funding, and then popular transport and green freight were also highlighted. And I think this is all well included in the suite of materials and support for NDCs that has been published over the past couple of weeks. And then additionally, how can non-party stakeholders support governments with designing and implementing ambitious NDCs on transport? It's really about best practice and support with capacity building, and I'm sure many in this community are already and will continue to do that. So just a quick summary of the discussion just now. I think what we really highlighted is the need to close the gap between the solutions possible to decarbonize transport and ensuring that those are included and reflected in NDCs. We touched on the integration of freight and passenger, and also the need to forge partnerships and collaboration across all types of stakeholder in order to deliver NDCs, the importance of non-transport actions across urban and land planning, but also energy to decarbonize the transport sector, and then of course on equity and gender perspective and workers as well. But thank you all so much for joining us today. It's been a really fantastic session, and I think I'm going to pass quickly over to Alice. Thanks.
Please, a very big round of applause to all of our speakers today. Really big thank you. It has been a really insightful discussions, and I'm sure as the transport sector community, we are ready to deliver the solutions. We are not the problem, and we're ready to raise ambitions for the next round of NDCs, for the future, for the pathway that we want to achieve. We are coming to an end of this meeting, and I just have a very personal favor. If you could give also another round of applause to my colleague Olivia here, because some of you may know that she is embarking on a new chapter in her professional life. And she has spent so much of her energy and time and tears and sweat, for bringing our community together through MPGCA, through her role, in the ITF for the past couple of years. And we just wanted to thank you one more time. And we wish you all the best in your future endeavors. And we know you will make very meaningful impact wherever you go. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
I think that's the end, but thanks so much.
Excuse me, panelists from the last segment, would you mind coming back for a quick picture? So Jill, Antonia, I'm sorry, and yeah, thank you. Nice. Thank you very much. And is that possible to bring Fernanda back to the screen if she's still around? Yeah. Very quick picture. It's the virtual speaker still on the screen? If not, that's okay.